Good evening viewers and welcome to the Art with World. I am your host Waheed. Creation of fiction, its readership, its discourse and effects on social and cultural life of a society is quite interrelated in many ways with each other. And to discuss what's the relationship of fiction, literature and its social context, we have with us today Dr. Waheed Rana Sahab. Dr. Waheed Rana Sahab is short story writer, translator, researcher and academic. He has worked as civil servant of Pakistan and currently he is teaching anthropology in Bahria University, Islamabad. He is the author of 3 books on fiction, media and anthropology. Welcome to our show, Waheed Rana Sahab.
Thank you.
How are you?
Thank you. I am very fine.
Okay. It's a very important discussion today and we think we'll learn a lot from you and our viewers will benefit from your ideas. Let's start this discussion of what's relationship of literature and its social context. If I can ask you why we create literature and why we read literature?
It's a very interesting question and this question is very frequently discussed and asked in academia and also in literary circles, literary gatherings. Why should we create a literature? And some people say that people are not reading literature.
Yeah.
The book reading habit is vanishing. So why should we create literature? Why literature? But question is, in the absence of literature, how we live and why we live? These are the two things which need answer and the answer lies in literature. If you allow me, let me quote a very famous writer who has written a remarkable book recently, a decade ago, Yuval Noah Harari, Sapien. I am not discussing the historical perspective and historical details which he has discussed, but I have picked one point from that. He says 5,000 years ago when cognitive revolution occurred on this earth and man started learning things, naming things, labeling things. That was the time when the fiction was created, when the fiction took birth, because all the things which were available in the nature were nature. They were not culture, they were not man-made. And what man has added to the nature is culture. So one thing that man added into the nature was his imagination. He started thinking about things, naming them, labeling them and then interpreting them. When he created culture, it means he started thinking and that was the time that literature was born. So,
if I can interrupt you, he also says that I think the main theme of Sapien is that storytelling was the factor which united certain people into groups.
It's in human instinct. Yeah. Storytelling is an instinctive requirement of human beings. They tell, because in the absence of communication, what is the difference between human being and animals? They communicate, animals communicate, but they don't use language. The language is created and when language was created, we started telling each other what we feel, what we name things. And that was the time when, time of birth of literature. So,
fiction, you can say poetry.
Yes, fiction. Exactly. Fiction, poetry and everything which we encounter in our daily life, which is not nature, but man-made. So literature is very important. It means when man started thinking, he started with fiction, with literature. And
or you can say literature was the output and product of his thinking.
A product of his thinking, because he started thinking, learned thinking. The process of thinking is an outcome of some inner feelings. Or inner feelings are reflected in language and then stories, then different discourses, and that is how literature came into being. And literature is still a very integral, very important part of our life. It will never be, it can never be underestimated. It can never be subsided by any other force, science or technology. All great scientists, all thinkers, they give a lot of weightage to literature. And some great scientists and thinkers who were not writers, but they always got inspiration from literature, reading literature. So literature is life. It tells you how to live.
What is it in literature that gives you inspiration? And, I mean, how would you define? I mean, what's its relationship with reality? What's its relationship with imagination? And in what way it gives inspiration?
There are two things. Reality, what is reality?
Yeah.
Is that something concrete, measurable, tangible? Reality is something in your mind, which you think, what you think is your reality, what I think is my reality. I exchange my reality with your reality. You exchange your reality with my reality. So reality, when reflected in words, when blended with imagination, it becomes literature. Poetry, the finest form of literature. And you say, you want to say, instinctive your demand of telling something what you feel. And when you say something which you feel, you say in different forms, in the form of language, in the form of gestures, in the form of symbols. And when in refined form, when you structure it in the form of a story, in the form of poem, rhyme, rhythm, in the poetry, then it becomes a final and finest form of literature.
Is it aesthetics of storytelling which inspires, or some great idea which is hidden within its lines, or some very important issue in society on which this reflects upon?
Great ideas are presented by philosophers,
Mm-hmm.
Aristotle, Plato, and others. In literature, great idea is not important.
Yes.
It is the way you express the idea, because it is said that the total stories narrated in the last 1000 years by storytellers are only 10 or 12.
Yeah.
It is the difference between the narration, the style, your own aesthetics, because aesthetics are different, feelings are different, narration is different, story is the same. Love, hate,
Death, life,
greed,
grief.
that's life.
Yeah.
That's life. So how you explain, how you write, how you depict, that makes the difference. That makes something great. Which is something which inspires you, you call it great. Something which never inspires you, you think it's rubbish, you say it's a low quality product of literature or creativity. For example, look at some great writers of our own time. Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Look at his novels. His novels are just narration of his visual experiences. He never writes, he never thinks and writes. He sees and writes. Manto, in our country, in our language, he sees, picks a point, and then narrates in his own way. The own way, the style, the uniqueness, that makes him great. Otherwise, thinking that he has presented a great idea and he's a great writer is just rubbish.
Let me put it another way. I agree with you. It's not a job of the fiction writers to give ideas. Basically,
To create great ideas.
yeah, and because great ideas also reduce reality and
Exactly.
in all dimensions of a phenomena,
True.
they
True.
are not fully grasped by that. But at the same time, one form of storytelling is that you give in an imaginative world that these things are like that. The writer is saying things like that. The other is exploration of human self. Most of modern writers, they focused on human inner contradictions, agony, with relation to different things happening around a person. So, what do you think? Literature as an exploration of inner self of human being, that is currently more relevant, or just telling and creating an imaginative world and narrating that?
Two genres have different style and different perhaps scope, poetry and prose.
Yeah.
If you write poetry, you're right. I agree with you. Your exploration of your inner self, what you think, you explain to people, you tell the people, and people share with you. That is poetry. That's all. Poetry is called Kare Pegambari. That is why poetry is the finest and the refined and the supreme form of literature. Prose is different. In prose, your inner contradictions, your inner feelings, when you portray, when you write them and write them in abstract way, which are not understandable, you are not communicative, you are not reaching people, it is useless. It has no relevance. Why you are writing if you are not reaching people? You are talking to yourself. Talking to yourself is not creating a creation of literature. Literature is, look, Arshad Sahab, I tell you, I ask you a question. People say that he is a great writer. He is not reaching the people because people don't have that mental level. They don't have the capacity and capability of reaching to the mental level of that man, so they don't understand. He will be understood after 100 years. It is a general saying in literary discussions. But I have a question. All great writers, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, today, they are reaching people. They are communicative effectively because they know the aspirations, they share the dreams, the feelings, and their inner pain, their inner agony is portrayed in such a way that I start traveling with them. My subconscious and his subconsciousness, they meet somewhere. That is the essence of this phenomena.
Okay, since you have asked me, I
Yes.
can share my views about that. Otherwise, mostly we need to
No,
hear from
it's a
you.
discussion.
In my opinion, teaching is not. You have just said that art or fiction should teach. I don't think this is function of.
No, I have not teach. Portray,
Okay.
communicate, not
No,
teach.
yeah.
Fiction writer is not a teacher.
Yeah, because
He is not a reformer.
Yeah, and
Just
they don't
No,
give glib
I
answers.
agree.
They raise
Yes,
questions rather.
I agree.
And secondly, you think that good and high literature should be, you are saying that should be understood by most of the people.
Most of the people.
But I think there is a lot of high literature which is not very popular. Popularity and good literature might be something different. James Joyce's Ulysses is a great book.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it is rated as one of the highest form of novels written in modernist tradition. But if you find how many readers out of that book, that may not be as many as you can
True,
find readers
true.
of Harry
I agree.
Potter or Da Vinci Code or something like that.
I agree.
So it is not a guarantee that very good writer would be a very popular writer as well. That's what my
On the contrary, it is not a condition. It is not a, you know, if you are not communicative, you are not reaching people, it does not give you the license of greatness. Because if you say, I am not reaching, since people are illiterate, they don't understand me, so I am great, I am not reaching them. This is again an allegation which is posed by those who have lower skill, lower background of literature. They don't know how to communicate. Yes, James Joyce, okay, War and Peace is difficult to travel with the writer, but
Yeah,
it
it's
was
very communicative.
No, but it is a great piece of work, art.
Yeah, it's a great
Reading
piece of work.
War
It's
and
great.
Peace is very difficult.
No, I don't think
For-
so.
कोई voluminous,
It has 1450
1400,
pages, something
yes,
like that.
that's true.
But it's
But
very easy to read.
on the other hand, John Steinbeck, 104 pages, The Pearl,
Mm.
the great piece of art. Same is the case with The Old Man and the Sea.
Yeah.
So why? Why this happened? Because they had such a mastery, such a great skill of telling the people and holding the hands while traveling. So there is a type of literature and type of writers who write for the writers. They are few, just few, but most of the writers, they reach the great writers have reached the people. Look at the people around you. You have translated Milan Kundera. Do you think Milan Kundera is not communicative? Gabriel Garcia Marquez is
Yeah,
not
but
communicative.
I also
Najib Mahfouz is
translated
not
Garcia
communicative.
Marquez, but he is more popular, and
Yes, exactly.
Kundera does not reach too
Kundera,
many people.
yes, he has some problem. Najib Mahfouz,
Oh, he's great. He's very
Ohan
popular.
Pamuk,
Yeah, they are great.
they are the contemporaries, and we know that they are communicative,
Yeah.
reaching
Well,
people.
That is also raises a question of readership.
Yes.
There in certain societies, since we are talking about relationship with the
Indeed.
fiction with society, there are many societies who are very receptive to fine piece of art and
Yes,
literature,
Exactly.
and there are many societies which are just philistine to them in many ways. So how would you explore and analyze? Let's take our society.
Yes,
We are not a very we are not a society who is very much in book reading.
Yes, exactly.
We may be interested in just commonplace things,
Exactly.
but not
exactly.
in high literature. What's the reason behind that?
Ashish sir, when somebody talks to you, it's a pleasure talking to you also, but you ask some very tricky questions, and you have to think twice that should I answer or should I keep quiet. Here the answer is depicts a very dismal situation. In Urdu literature in Pakistan, in this part of the world, we blame three things for low book reading habits. Number one, literacy, low rate of literacy, economic conditions, expensive books. We generally say if we sell books at a cheaper price, we raise the literacy level of people, and we allow people to take a sigh of relief from economic crisis, they will start reading. But this is wrong. I don't agree with that. Book reading, reading literature or any kind of creative activity is a cultural phenomena. It's not economic, it's not literacy or numeracy. Culturally, there is a problem. We have to look back to our history. I can talk about last 70, 80, 100 years. The book reading habit and the involvement of common man, literate, affluent man with literature and creativity has lowered, and lowered at a very depressing level. Why? Because we have a culture, we created a culture where book reading, love for art, love for literature, love for painting, love for music is not considered as a fine activity. I'll, if you allow me, cite some examples
Yeah, sure.
as a response to your question. In 1950s, you see, it has a culture.
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with your system of governance, system of government, system of the mindset of your rulers. 1950s, Jamal Abdul Nasser became the president. In the first cabinet meeting, he told, you have to receive a man with complete respect and pay the best of homage which you can pay, because I am introducing you to Egypt. And he called Dr. Taha Hussain. He said, look, this is Taha Hussain. He was a blind man, a great writer of Egypt. He is Egypt. Second, Fidel Castro and Gabriel Garcia Marquez were best friends.
Yeah.
Whenever he was in Cuba, he used to sit with Fidel Castro, not in his palace, but in his hotel. Fidel Castro used to visit his hotel. Fidel Castro was an avid reader of Hemingway.
Yeah.
You know that. We know him as a dictator, as a military man, but avid reader of Hemingway, lover, critic, zabardast aadmi. Why? Because there was a culture. When Pablo Neruda was ambassador of Chile, I think it was 70, 71,
Yeah.
he used to sit with François Mitterrand at Champs-Élysées in the evening for a cup of coffee. The president of France,
Was Mitterrand at that time? I think
yes,
someone else was.
Mitterrand was president, and
Okay.
Mitterrand was sitting with Pablo Neruda for coffee
Yeah.
at Champs-Élysées. This was the culture.
And that also reminds me of one other thing you just referred to, France. When Sartre was running campaign against France in
Oh,
favor
yes.
of Algiers freedom movement,
Yes, yes,
he
yes.
was not arrested. And when people asked de Gaulle that why are you not arresting Sartre,
How can
he said Sartre is, how can I arrest him?
how
Sartre
can,
is
how
France.
can how can I arrest France?
Yeah.
This is the culture. You know, we have talked about the countries which are not neighbors, which are around the corner, different corner of the world, but they reflect a unanimous mindset that they respect
Yeah.
writers and literature. That tradition, you know, travels. In Japan, you go to a bus stop and a train traveling, people reading book. I know what they are reading. They are not reading a fine literature, but they are reading. Once you start the habit of reading, in Pakistan, affluent people who have a lot of money, do they buy books? Do they read books?
No.
Do they like to talk about books?
They can spend a lot on some fine dinner,
Exactly,
but
exactly.
they cannot buy a book.
They cannot buy a book, but the book is bought by those people who can hardly afford it, but they buy it. And at the same time, we are producing the best translations of the world literature. You are one of them. You have translated Milan Kundera. Other people are translating Juan Pamuk.
Yeah.
People are translating, you know, I translated, many other people are translating Marquis, Graham Greene. Remember, every great writer is reaching Pakistan, and they are reaching to the people who want to read literature. But the low book reading habit has lot to do with your culture. And one thing also, early schooling. In primary school, in early schooling, our teachers, they have to inculcate the habit of book reading. They have to promote the habit of book reading.
Waheed Sahab, you have rightly pointed out the situation about
Yes.
reading, but still I need to have answers why it is so, why our culture is so, and it is not that much receptive to new ideas and books and all that.
Lack of respect for creativity. The very, very painful answer, but this is the situation. We have not created a respect for any literature, any creativity. We don't respect the creative man. We don't respect great artists. We don't respect a singer. We don't respect a poet. Rather, we ridicule the poets. We ridicule the writers. If you allow me, I recall when I joined government and I prepared a small summary on some technical subject. My senior officer, I was junior most, he threw the paper to me and said, "Look, this is a serious job. It is not short story writing." That was a lesson. He reminded me that writing literature, creating literature is absolutely a non-serious job. That was a mindset, and it travels. That was 40 years ago. Still, it is the culture. So, in the early years, in Mughal period, and after that, all great poets, they were not very respectful citizens of the society. They were courtiers working for the kings, rajas and maharajas, sitting in their darbar, paying them standing ovations on their entry, and then reciting their poetry, ridiculing themselves. So how can you expect the society to respect the fine arts, the literature, the painting, the other things? No, it will not happen. It will happen if we, at some point, very early school age, we start telling people that, look, creativity, art is more important than the money, than the wealth. Why people introduce themselves as, we introduce each other with our car, with our bungalow, with our wealth, not with our skill, because it is not respected. It is not accepted by the society, acknowledged by the society. The only thing acknowledged is your wealth. So people sell wealth. Simple as that. Same is the case with literature.
Yeah, and this is also a very important factor that those who write, even if they are great writers here in Pakistan, they cannot earn their living because of their written work. There are not many publishers who would pay the
Yes,
writers.
True, true.
In most of the cases, writers pay for themselves for their books to be
Yes,
published.
yes, exactly.
So, in many ways, money is important, I think, for living. But all those artists, they cannot live whatever they work, even if they are. I mean, there may be few, but not many, who can run their households, live a decent life by selling their stories or paintings or.
I think painting is a better
Yeah.
option for a creative man. If paintings are sold and he can earn some living, but not by poetry, not through fiction or writing novels. But the reason is the same. When people write, what they expect from the society? They want society to buy the books, and buy the books in such a number that they earn their living, respectable living. and that is very difficult, because we have discussed in details the why, book reading habits, and publishers they have their own problems. And you know, during the last 10 years, I was told by one publisher that I prefer to accept the books and publish at my own cost. Those are translations from the foreign literature. Again, why foreign literature? Why not local novels, local short stories?
Could you explain that? Why?
I asked him, because he
Okay.
told me. I
Okay.
had no idea. I asked him why. He said those books are purchased by the booksellers and bought by the people, online orders. But when I say a book by XYZ is available, novel, you want to buy? He said no, I don't want to.
So, if I can infer what you are saying, that foreign writers are read in Pakistan through the translations, that also gives another idea. I may be wrong, that
Yes,
maybe their readers are aware of high literature, and
Yes.
they know that those great writers have written something wonderful.
Exactly, exactly. I agree with you, 100% agree with you. It means readers have a sense, they understand what is fine literature
Yeah.
and what is not fine. In fact, in our society, during the last 20 years, we have not produced very good prose writers and very good poets. Although each one of us claims that he is the greatest, but when every writer is great in his own right, but the decision about your greatness is not taken by you, but by the readers, by the people who read your writings. Our writers, the crop of writers which we have produced, which came in the field of writing, they have low skill in writing, absolutely no knowledge of the world, no knowledge of literature written around. They have not read any great writer, they have not read any novel written in the world, they have not heard about them, but they imagine that we should not read the literature, we should not see what is happening around, and we are creating something out of imagination from, you use the word, from inner, your reflection, depiction of your inner self is enough. But that is not enough. It is enough for you, but not enough for the society. That is why people don't buy the books. Even some books come and they are sold like hotcakes. There are novels, there are books. I have seen they are purchased with great love, and people read them. So you can see, you cannot say that you cannot blame people, the writers, and we cannot blame writers too, because increasing their capacity of writing is not my job, it's not your job.
You have just said that many a writer of our country, they are not well aware of what's happening around. It may be partially true, but there are many writers I personally know, and even if we take examples of our great writers like Kurtulan Haider, Abdullah Hussain, Manto Saab, and many other. I mean, they were very much aware of things happening around them, their local culture, their local languages, local expressions, and they were also aware of what was happening around and what were the latest movements in literature and
Very
art.
true, very true.
So maybe it's partially true, but many people.
Yes, I agree. It's not across the board valid to everybody. Sadat Asar Manto, he was not very educated in formal
but in
terms.
his initial
But
days,
he
translated.
translated the great writers of Russia, under the, so because he was guided by Bari Ali.
Bari Ali. Yeah.
You know, he was raised with great people.
Yeah.
He was, that is
So
very
you can
important.
say that our
Yes,
cultural
exactly.
environment was much
Cultural environment
more
was much receptive,
yeah.
and he was receptive to the environment also. Manto and Quratul, you see, Ashfaq Ahmad translated go though for Mary Library, I think the publisher was Mary Library, and in the Zahar Hussain they translated great pieces of art. When you translate some great piece of art, you read it. It means you are aware. You know, it's a sort of exercise which introduces you what is happening around. You see the world. Quratul and Heather and all great, because that was the time Mumtaz Mufti used to call. They were produced in the form of gucha. Yani, he uses the word angur ka gucha, means ke in one era many great writers were there. For example, if you allow me, Manto, Raj Singh Bedi, Ram Lal, Ghulam Abbas, Upendranath Ashk, and all great writers. They were of the same age, same era, and they were learning from, you know, from each other also. And after that, there are people who produced masterpieces. They read, still they are, but they are very few.
Yeah.
Most writers in Urdu literature, in prose particularly, and for poets are supposed to be naive to the world happenings, because they claim that we don't look out, we look inside.
No, there are many poets who
there are many poets
talked about
like Faiz Saab on.
Yeah.
I know that, but many, and in prose, people have not read the modern trends, because when they write abstract, when they write difficult things, they think that perhaps we are creating something new. Newness is a misconception. There is nothing new. It is the style which makes something new or something unique. But if you look at the tradition of Urdu
but there
literature,
are paradigm shifts.
Paradigm shift, exactly.
People start understanding universe differently, human societies differently,
yes.
and then reflects in literature.
You
So
see,
there might be something new. I mean,
the one thing very encouraging, and you know, which always gives me a pride, when short stories started in Urdu, it started very late. When you compare French short story or Russian short story or American short story, but it took off in a grand way. They produced masterpieces, and those short story writers can be placed with great writers. Mopsa, Chekhov, Dostoevsky. I don't say there were Dostoevskys in Pakistan, but there were Rajat Singh Bedi, Manto, Ghulam Abbas.
yeah.
Can anybody say Ghulam Abbas is in any sense lower than any writer, contemporary writer of English world, French world, Russian literature? No, they are, you know, they were just wonderful. In novel, we have been weak from the very beginning. But there was a man who was not a regular novelist who produced Amrao Janada.
Yeah, he was an engineer.
He was an engineer, but you know, he produced Amrao Janada, which is
novel.
To me is still one of the great masterpieces of Urdu literature.
Yeah.
And many other. But with the passage of time, a decadence process started. And
why so?
Because we have discussed, in detail also, because of the non-acknowledgement attitude of the society, the
Okay.
cultural problem, the
Yeah, I think, but
society
these are
has.
symptoms. The problem runs further deep. But let's just leave it aside for
Yes,
now.
yes, yes. It's
Any other novels you would like to mention, which you like, or?
खुदा की बस्ती,
Mhm.
शौकत सिद्दीकी, and Abdullah Hussain novel Nasheb is very good novel.
It's very good.
Very good novel.
Bagh.
Bhag is very good.
Nasheb is a novella, I guess.
Novella,
Yeah.
novella.
Mm.
Nasheb is a novella, and Quratul Ain Haider, and Jamila Hashmi, Intizar Hussain Basti. They have written,
Yeah.
different people have different views about those novels, but they are the pieces of art which can be mentioned with pride that we have
Yeah,
produced.
sure.
But tradition could not continue. Even in today's our time, people are writing novels like Mustansar Hussain Taral is writing. Is a
Prolific writer.
Prolific. He writes too much. He
Yeah.
writes on everything, but he is read widely.
Okay. He has traveled widely, I guess.
He has traveled widely, and he's read widely also because young people know him. Interestingly, Arshad Saab, my son, who is an engineer, when people say we don't read literature, we don't know anything, he could not understand. Perhaps many contemporaries, but he is very comfortable with the Rajan Singh Bedi, with Manto,
Mhm.
with Ismat.
Mm.
And answer, I know, I have answered you, but I always quote him that he can read. He discusses with me. He discusses Bedi's stories, he discusses Ismat Appa's stories, Manto's short stories.
Mhm.
It means that literature has a power to reach to the people even after 100 years of their appearance.
Yeah. You have also been writing short stories, and you have a collection of short stories.
Yes,
Padhao se
Padhao se
pehle.
pehle. That was
So-
25 years ago, yes. That was first and last book I published.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I
why
never
did-
stopped writing. I have been writing, but I
Okay.
never produced any book after that.
After that, you were disappointed by the readers?
No, absolutely not. I was not disappointed by the readers. I was appreciated, and I was acknowledged for whatever I have written. I was translated. I was very young, but I was encouraged by my seniors, and but I was a greedy man.
Mm.
I gave more focus to my career, enhancing my education. I wanted to do some, foreign trainings, and wanted to do PhD, wanted to study in some American or Canadian university. I mean, I was a normal human being. So I did that. So I could not concentrate on writing short stories. And I don't repent, because my children don't blame me for that, because they are happy that I have given them a reasonably good life. But I blame myself that I could have written more. But after this gap of many years, I was writing, continuously writing, reading. I was reading too much in those times. Because the inspiration in technical work of Planning Commission, inspiration in writing on culture, inspiration on doing anything was always coming from reading poetry and literature. It was something.
You are also doing a wonderful work, and you are writing about Islamabad, Ek Shahar Ki Katha,
Ek Shahri Katha.
story of a city.
जी जी.
What was the main inspiration behind this?
Yes, it's interesting story. Book is ready, Shahri Katha. It has been composed and lying on my table. I will hand over to publisher very soon. Arshad Sahab, I belong to the first generation of Islamabad, Islamabadites, whatever you call. I was very small kid when I came here. My primary education, my college, my university and everything I completed here. I saw some things which I want to share with the people. I spent my early childhood with Bengalis. I am the only generation who have seen, who have lived, have spent time with Bengalis. That was Islamabad of 1970s, 60s, late 60s and 70s.
Okay.
My neighbor was Bengali, my class fellows were Bengalis, my friends were Bengalis, my father's friends were Bengalis. So nobody else in Pakistan has seen this. Bengalis were in Bangladesh,
Yeah.
East Pakistan or in Islamabad. So I thought that I have some unique experiences of this city. Why not? I'm a short story writer. Why not, instead of creating short stories, I write the facts in the form of fiction. It's not autobiography, because autobiography is written by those people who are very important people. I'm not important.
Everyone is important.
Yes, but people don't want to know about me and about my chacha, about my uncle, about my brothers. They want to know about the happenings, events which I encountered in my childhood, in my young age, and when I grew up, I joined government. They are important because I saw very important events, national events. Everybody wants to know about that. So I'm not telling the story of history. I'm not telling them the accounts of the happenings. I'm telling them what happened. This happened. It's a historical fact. 16 December.
Yeah.
This happened. But how my father reacted, how Bengalis reacted. I was a small kid. How I saw. You see, with my innocent feelings, I was looking. This is happening, and then the history turns, takes a turn. A new government comes. Then what happens? Then a prime minister is hanged. What was the reaction? You see the history books. You see the politicians writing, but I was a kid. I saw what happened in the city. I have written that. That morning, I came out with my friend. We were roaming in the city. We saw a silence, a very, very, very strange situation. But nobody was saying something, but everybody was saying something. This happened. Then another
Such a loud silence.
A loud silence. Then another government came. Then in government, what happened? So I have taken the most important events which are of the interest of readers, but personally witnessed by me, and written them in the form of fiction. Then during days, my early years of my service, I went to take a part in a competition held in India. That was a Pearson competition, and I had to go there to win a scholarship. I won that, but the first Pakistani to win that. But I was in India, and how I saw India, how Indians were reacting towards Pakistani nuclear capacities, because that was the time rumors were there, but nothing on the surface. You know, these are the things which have compelled me to write this. When I started writing, I got it, you know, promulgated, sort of, I use the word promulgation on the Facebook. The reaction was very good. Everybody, you know, asking me, please write, please write. My contemporaries, my seniors, very famous people, writers, they said, please continue. So that gave me a sort of boost, support, and I completed the book.
Thank you very much, Waheed Rana sir, for being with us this evening. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk to the people and speak my heart. Thank you very much.
So viewers, thank you for watching us. See you next Sunday, same time.